Over there for the Commodores a couple times down there. I used to go watch Lionel Richie play tennis at the tennis courts on Tuskegee campus. But yeah, lived there, moved to Baltimore for a while before we even settled back in Amsterdam. So yeah, we bought into Dad's dream. And then eventually my mom becomes an artist too. She's an amazing poet. That's the family breakdown of us. We all been centered around what Pop was doing and influenced by what Pop was doing.
Welcome to the BLAC Appalachian Coalition's podcast entitled BLAC Re-Membering, where we will bring to you the heavy and the hope across the Ohio River Valley. We want to remember who we are, where we've come from. We want to speak to the oral history of what we've done, what we've achieved. We want to speak to the ills that we have experienced, while also finding solutions to those problems, those issues. We want to deal with the narrative that has kept us deeply rooted in despair. Now we want to punch through that narrative and stand up and say, we are remembering our Black past, and we are rooted, and we are here to stay. Welcome to BLAC Re-Membering. We hope that you find your place, your space, and your voice in this podcast.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the BLAC Remembering podcast, where we highlight the heavy and the hope. This year, 2024, ASALH, the Association for the Study of African American Life and History, which is founded by Carter G. Woodson, also with connections to West Virginia, is the oldest Black history organization. And this year, as part of the theme, we celebrate the importance of arts and culture. Today, I am excited to have a wonderful conversation with Eric Jordan, Program Coordinator for the Center for Black Culture and Research at the University of West Virginia. How are you doing today, Eric?
I'm pretty good. I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's been a while that we've been trying to have this conversation. So I feel like you are really Ken. So this is a wonderful, relaxed conversation. Before we go on further, I just want to explain that the way I'm shaping this conversation is to give an overview of you because of the roles that you play. And then I want to concentrate on a little bit on your family, because I call it the West Virginia Jordan family arts legacy. And then we're just going to talk about you as an artist. So I got to start off with your more than 9 to 5. Can you tell us just a little bit about the center and significance on the campus of West Virginia University?
Oh, no doubt. The center, we're home away from home. That's what we try to be. You know, it can be a little overwhelming coming to a predominantly white institution as big as West Virginia University. So we try to have, a home, a center, and programming, give the kids basically a safe space, but like things that they can do, that when they get homesick, they can come back to us and do things with us. We got a bunch of stuff coming up here in the next couple of weeks. It's welcome week, starting to move in and all that stuff and stay. But programs like the LIFT program that we're doing here, where kids can come early before the rest of the students get here, create a bond with each other, live with each other, and get a sense of how to navigate this campus before everybody gets here. Have some relationships start to build a community for them to lean on while they go through. Our Belmere Welcome Back annual cookout is one of the first things we do without the week. It brings the whole community in. So, we got the live DJs. We're up there frying and barbecuing and doing what we do. So we try to let these kids know right off the bat, hey, you're starting to feel a certain kind of way, come talk to us. So that's
the mountains of West Virginia. Yes.
Yes, in the mountains.
Here's the thing. One of the wonderful things that we do with this podcast is we also attach resources. So we'll be able to share with them the links so that they can actually find out a little bit more, because they might want to send some of their family members to West Virginia.
Yeah, man. I'm telling you, we're updating our website. So this would be a good time to do that right now. I got our whole calendar planned up from 24 to 25.
Well, there's so many introductions. And as I briefly mentioned, I want to be able to talk about the Jordan family cultural legacy as a way to introduce your roots. And I will have a part 2 to go more in depth. So as the listeners get snippets, we're going to go back and have a conversation that goes into more depth to sort of encapsulate and help to document for the region and beyond what you've done. Because when you talked about the center, your whole career has been about family, creating a sense of family. And I'm going to read this very briefly so that the resume is there and then you can expand upon it. So we're talking about your father, Norman Jordan, who was born in 1938 and passed away on June 27, 2015. He's a native of West Virginia, spent his early life in Cleveland, Ohio, returned to West Virginia in 1977 to earn a Bachelor's of Fine Arts in Theater from WVU. Soon after, received a Master's in African American Studies from Ohio State University. He was a leading voice in the BLAC Arts Movement in the 1960s and 70s. And I think that's something that you and I have been talking about. People talk about the Harlem Renaissance all the time, but there was actually a BLAC Arts Movement in the 1960s, along with the activist legacy that we're all familiar with. Norman Jordan authored 5 books of poetry, and his work has been included in more than 42 anthologies, probably more since this has been written. And in 2008, he was inducted into the Affrilachian Poets Collective. And the Affrilachian poets invented the term, and he became an elder statesman of their group. He was also the co-founder of the West Virginia African American Arts and Heritage Academy, which has been renamed after him, a week-long summer program that offers teenagers the opportunity to study an art, a creative discipline of their choice. And I was lucky to have met you for the first time when I was a 2013 artist in residence and met your father for the first time at that time. So here we go. Tell us a little bit more about your family, your brothers and sisters, some additional things that don't show up on the internet, just to kind of ground you in a place and in a family.
You know, my dad was doing his thing, like you said, in the Black Arts Movement. Kind of like where he went, we went. You know.
And when you say we, you got to tell me, give me your mom's name and your siblings' names.
My mother's name, Lucella Jordan, and then my siblings are my sister Sherry Jordan. She's the oldest. I'm the second oldest. Then my brother Anthony, who just passed away a couple months ago, down in South Carolina. He was after him. Then my brother Gandhi Jordan, who's down in Atlanta, amazing artist also. Then there's my sister Guava, who lives out in Washington. And then there's my brother Lionel. And some people may know him as the artist 66240, a.k.a. Jumbo Green. So, yeah, that's the clan. The arts and art, it goes farther than just my father. It goes to my Aunt Mitty. You know, my Aunt Mitty, she worked with Gil Scott-Heron. She was a mentor to Erykah Badu in the Dallas area when she lived there. My Aunt Mitty, Jordan, is a real big part of the influences on me as well as my father. But I think also my father and my Aunt Mitty had this creative bond between each other and pushed each other in those times. But yeah, that's the family, that's the clan. And from Aunt Mitty and my father, the inspiration and interest just goes through cousins. And I got so many talented people in my family.
I said, Jordan Arts Legacy, and I didn't even know. I'm so glad to hear these additional strands and connections and webs.
Yeah, it's in our blood. And, you know, you really see that at the camp, and we'll get to that. I say early, the way we traveled, my father was one of those artists who went for it. I remember the Black Arts Movement when he was doing things in the Cleveland area, but he decided to take his shot at California. And he moved out to California. And he was out there for a couple of years. I went and spent the summer out there with him in Berkeley. My father, when he had me out there, I was playing congas for his poetry. When he would do poetry readings, I played congas for him. And he got a small East Coast tour set up starting at Howard University, but money was low at that time. So he had to figure out how we were going to get out from Berkeley, California to Howard University. So we hitchhiked. That's what you did back then in the artists in the early 70s, I guess, you know, free love and all that. But we hitchhiked from there. And that's where I started learning a lot of this, the things that make me up a little bit. Going for it, feel, you know, doing what you do. But went to Berkeley, did that. Then we came back. We lived in Tuskegee, Alabama for a while. My mother was going to forestry school down there. My mother graduated from there. I lived right down the street from a couple of Commodores, performed in a locking group back then. Do you remember locking?
Yes.
Yes, I was a locker before. So even before hip hop, I was locking. So
We're of the same generation.
yeah, yeah. I always have to do that with,
Eric, you know what? I had dreads hanging down my back at one point. They're in a basket now.
Yes, and as mine falls off, I keep putting them in a bag. And mom still has dads. But yeah, I would travel. Like I said, we opened up for the Commodores a couple times down there. I used to go watch Lionel Richie play tennis at the tennis courts on Tuskegee campus. But yeah, lived there, moved to Baltimore for a while before we even settled back in Amsterdam. So yeah, we bought into Dad's dream. And then eventually my mom becomes an artist too. She's an amazing poet. That's the family breakdown of us. We all been centered around what Pop was doing and influenced by what Pop was doing.
And that's what's not there on these bios. One of the things that I love about our podcast is to talk about the ways that our region moves in and out, that migration is important. As much as some people might want to contain the region and like put it in some kind of bell jar, you can't breathe in a bell jar.
No.
And that's why, I'm so glad that the Affrilachian poets then inducted him, because they were reaching Sankofa. They were reaching back to the roots. They weren't just thinking about this particular generation of young people, not just students. Some of them were professors, but in Lexington, Kentucky, but they were pulling the roots back together. So I'm going to jump ahead and talk about the journey that really leads to the academy, the Summer Academy, because we'll talk a little bit more about its founding and whatnot. But did you envision a journey that would take you from student to counselor to instruction and now administrator of the camp? And did your parents ever talk about a legacy that they were putting in place?
No, we didn't really talk about it, but it's the kind of thing that once I did it, I knew I was doing it for the rest of my life. I knew it. It just had that big of an impact on me. I'm one of the few kids who at a young age, like, I know I wanted to be an artist. I mean, I just love my dad and I just want to do whatever he did. But I got a lot of fulfillment out of it. So it wasn't a false narrative. I know it's something I wanted to do. So for someone like me, when you get experience to a camp like that, it's life changing. Athletics, they have a blueprint. Academics, they have a blueprint. But artists, young artists, there's nothing there for us. So like when you find something like our camp that takes you on a week and helps you develop a craft and you see what work ethic is about and you see what focusing on a project is about, and then the result, because of the way we do it, throughout the week, kids take the class and they work toward the showcase. And I already had a work ethic because like I said, I got it from my dad, but I was an athlete. I love basketball. I'm not going to shy away from that. I love basketball. Mm-hmm. But, translated to both of those, whether it was athletics or artistic. And whenever I just put it to that. So no, did I envision that? No, but I knew it was something that I did not want to stop. And if I had any control over it, I was going to make sure it didn't stop. And I know my brothers felt that way. My father loved this camp. My father loved this camp and he thought it was so needed. And he's right, because just for the things I said, there's just not a blueprint for young artists. And this kind of gives you something like that. It gives you like, oh, okay, I see that. I can talk to some artists this week and pull that, if that's what you're into.
And that's the thing I'll share that I really saw, because coming from a small town in the foothills of North Georgia in Appalachia, I got a chance to go to Governor's Honors. But this is beyond Governor's Honors. Because literally, as a something-year-old person, I enjoyed the fact that there was discipline and then there was freedom. The standard line is, by the time you end camp, if you didn't know the words to Lift Every Voice and Sing, you do, because every morning you start off with singing that song.
Right.
And like you said, and it doesn't just happen. You're leading up to a showcase where all of your family and your friends come and celebrate what you've learned. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is that when I was there, I came to the University of West Virginia camp, but now you've gone from Camp Washington Carver to West Virginia State University. So I also think personally that before you got to an actual HBCU in West Virginia, you gave them not just a creative experience, but a taste of what an HBCU would be
Yeah,
like.
yeah.
Do you agree?
I definitely agree. And don't get me wrong, I love what we did here at WVU because it was very convenient for me working at WVU. And also Jackie Dooley, who was on staff at that time. It was very convenient. And we were able to use our resources then. But being at West Virginia State is a difference. And you see the difference. When these kids walk down the halls of that campus, they see Black faces. And that's something you might not see at WVU. Just the campus and just that whole aura and the staff of our people working. And West Virginia State is awesome because they love to see us come. They love our kids and they just embrace our kids. Like I said, they both had their benefits, but West Virginia State is where we were supposed to be. Definitely. Right. And then it's, like you said, it's like coming full circle because starting at Camp Washington Carver being the first Black 4-H camp in the country ever. Yes, the first Black.
I'm a 4-H'er. I'm wearing my green today. I didn't know.
And I was a 4-H counselor. So I was a 4-H counselor and a history counselor once. This kind of made us full circle back. Camp Washington Carver still to this day is the best experience we ever had for the camp because you stayed in cabins. You stayed out there. They cooked ranch style, the whole compound. We used to have the Native American Indian chiefs come down and do fireside chats with us and tell us Native Indian stories. It was amazing. I really miss Camp Washington Carver. But, it could be me because every camp is going to be like, my camp was the best camp. It feels full circle being at West Virginia State. It feels like we're where we're supposed to be.
And like I said, more detail later, but you bring world-class, when I say world-class roots in Appalachia instructors.
Yes, our amazing.
It's special. So I'm going to make a jump.
Okay.
Who is Monster Lung?
Monster Lung.
Now we're talking about Eric, and from here on out, exclusively Eric as a creative maker, beer,
right,
person.
It's funny when you said who was Monster Lung, and I said Monster Lung, but it's like the start of a song. It's like the first song on my new album, an Appalachian Hip Hop Story, Part 1. That album was sparked. This is my first vocal album since the 90s. My first vocal album was, I think, 1991. Dropped that album. It was in PG County, Maryland. I was living there at that time. But I haven't put everything else since then has been me doing music production, music management, or music promotion, and running my independent record label here in West Virginia with my artists. So me being vocally creative and being a songwriting, I've done hooks for songs, but I never had to write out the full thing because I was just kind of in development mode, developing artists, mentor mode. That's where I've been, I guess, for the last 20, 30 years. But the first song of my album, my new album, An Appalachian Hip Hop Story Part 1, I wrote a memoir. And I always thought that it'd be pretty dope to have a soundtrack for the memoir. So once the book was done, and it's not out yet, it comes out at the end of this year. But when it was fully edited and done, and I started writing, a lot of the songs I started writing just started coming from stories from the memoir. So that's this whole first album, which is a difference between the album that I'm doing with Dr. Turner and Dr. Olson, out of East Tennessee State, the No Options Hip Hop compilation. So I have that album, but I have Monster Lung and Appalachian Hip Hop Story Part 1 album. But when you say that, I almost just went into the song because the song is pretty biographic. I say,
can you give us a little not a freestyle, but a little piece?
Yeah, I was going to do it. It goes, Monster Lung from the log town holler. Where to survive, you get the most out of dollar. Minimum wage living, $8.75 an hour. Numbing the pain with opioids and whiskey sour. When your first love is your second cousin. In the town so small, all the melanins related. We didn't know no better. We were just youngins. Hormones and sex relations had us all infatuated, huh? And it goes on, but but yeah, that made me think of that.
Like you said, being a particular community person, I can relate. Artist development. You just gave it. It's not just mentorship.
Yeah.
And coming back into your own. This being your independently focused singularly your project.
Right.
At the same time, you're doing a compilation.
Right.
I mean, I can relate so
Right.
much. So, okay, just because I want to get this straight in my mind and also for the listeners, is part one or chapter one already out?
Yes. An Appalachian hip hop story, part one. The album is out. It dropped on June 10th.
Okay.
No Options, the hip hop compilation,
Compilation.
Appalachian, of all Appalachian hip hop artists. That comes out on August 2nd.
That's what I was thinking. And that's the
Yeah.
timeliness of this interview.
Yeah.
So, for self and community, why are these albums so special on the 50th anniversary of hip hop?
Well, I can definitely say for the No Options album, a hip hop compilation of Appalachian hip hop artists, I think that's a layered question.
That's a big one.
For someone like me, that
You've given hour-long presentations to answer that question.
yes,
With visual aids and audio.
yes, I have. Yes, I have, and it's because I mean, I was there from the beginning. I've been there from the beginning. My cousins were coming down from New York, visiting us in Cleveland, then later visiting us in Anstead, West Virginia. You know, the city cousins come down to visit the country cousins. That happened. So that happened, but this is happening in the early 70s. And they are telling us about this culture, this music thing going on in New York. And it's hip hop. And we're down in Anstead, and they showing us how they make beats on parch tables and they freestyle, and we doing that. And I'm loving that. Like I said, that's the early 70s. But you jump up to the 80s, my first introduction to hip hop, I told you it was a locker. So you know my first introduction to hip hop was a break dancer. I was a break dancer first. I was a B-boy. I was inspired by, New York City Rock Steady Crew, Beat Street. Beat Street had a huge influence on me. But that's what I'm saying. It's a layered question.
Okay,
but to get
and I
back
got to
to
slip this thing back in because I know. And talk about your father's connection.
Oh, wow. Me and my father have always felt like the Black Arts Movement was the build up.
But the sampling, tell the young folks that little piece that shows pop culture.
Black Star sampling my father's poem, Feeding the Lions, and interlude on their album, because they only made one. Well, they made the second album, but the album everybody knows of, the first album, Yo Yeah, and they sampled my father recording from Motown at the Apollo. And Motown recorded a group of poets from the Apollo called Black Spirits. The name of the album is called Black Spirits. Mos Def, and I think the producer was High Tech, and actually from Cincinnati, Ohio. So I don't even think High Tech knows he sampled a Cincinnati dude, sampled a Cleveland dude. But yeah, they used that. They used my father in that. Our father has been in a lot of projects, and me and my brother did here. And like whether it's Hometown Boy, Neo Griots, these are some of the poems that my father has been on. And then the first 3 or 4 Recons album that we did back in 99, my father also came in. He did original piece on that album. But yes, my father has been involved with hip hop, whether he knew it or not, through whether with Mos Def and them first. And my mother also mentions it in her poem. My mother's poem on my new album, Appalachian Hip Hop Story Part 1, my mother's on that album. My brother's on that album. Both my brothers on that album. My son is on that album. My wife is on that album. But my mother's poem, she mentions the Black Arts Movement and the connection of hip hop. And my father felt that too.
Wow.
But I did want to say about the importance of hip hop, the 50 years in hip hop and anniversary, and with the Appalachian compilation that we have with No Options. I really believe that what makes hip hop so dope is when you go to these regions and you hear a new voice. When we heard Atlanta for the first time, that was awesome. When we heard West Coast for the first time, that was awesome. Even Texas, we feel like it's Appalachian time to be heard and our stories to be told. Hip hop is a great storytelling format. So I feel like you're going to hear some great stories that you never heard before. When I came back in 1999 to work here with my brother specifically, we made a conscious effort to build self-pride and self-esteem because it's something we saw that kids from West Virginia did not have. You ask a kid about who his favorite basketball player was, who his favorite artist. None of them were from West Virginia because we have no pro teams here. We had no celebrity artists. So we was like, let's give these kids something they can reach on and call their own. So we consciously created content with music about Appalachian living, holler living, how we live, something they could call ourselves, to the point where we called our group 304 Recons. And at that time, 304 was the area code of West Virginia. So I think it's big.
Well, this is going to be an easy one for you. What is bringing you joy these days?
I know it's going to sound crazy, but finding my artistic voice. I mean, I'm human, and I never liked the way I sounded. So when I say there's a gap between 1990 and now me being in vocal lead again artistically, it took that long, I guess, for me to find my voice. And I'm really enjoying songwriting. I'm really enjoying telling these stories. And, you know, I've always felt like my place was to be the support system for someone else who did that, whether it was my father, whether it was my brother, whether it was my mother. Let me be the support system, because I have all the tools and resources to do that. I just never really looked inward. And now that I have, that's given me a lot of joy.
Well, that is a wonderful model for anyone's life at any stage in the game, wherever they come from. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. I enjoyed this.